Good morning, everyone. I'm Phil. I'm the CEO of Jagex. I'm delighted to be able to open the Brightest Britain track at PGC today. Today I'm going to explore in my talk some trends within live games and talk about our theory for where they go into the future. And there's also a bit of a side story about a studio that's refound its purpose and is entering a new era of energy and ambition. But first, I just want to start with a very quick backstory. Jagex was founded as a startup coming out of Cambridge University's computer science lab, founded by the Gower brothers, who are in this picture, and they released the very first version of RuneScape back in 2001. And it grew quickly, but exploded in popularity in the mid-2000s, and with millions of players and hundreds of staff coming on, investors came into the company, there was a big rush to build the next big hit game. And this was what I think of as the second era of the company. It's between 2011, 2014, and honestly it was quite turbulent. But fortunately, during this period with the RuneScape, we were still doing well. We were modernizing the game, updating the tech and the content, and we even got to a place where we split the game in two. We had a more retro nostalgic version of the game that we called old school RuneScape for the real traditionalists in the audience, and then we had just what we called RuneScape, the contemporary version that we kept on modernizing. So by 2015, when the turbulence had mostly passed and the management had changed, the company was refocused around RuneScape, and all of that time and the things we'd done were really paying off. The revenue climbed back above its previous peak, and the user base activity levels were consistently growing. And this is what brought us into what I think of as the third age. The turnaround in the game led to the acquisition in 2016 of Jagex by Fukong Interactive out of Shanghai, China, and it meant Jagex became the Western-facing part of a global gaming group. It was also when I stepped up as CEO, having previously run RuneScape and a lot of the company's operations for the previous few years. So it was a new era, and this gave us an opportunity to look again at our company vision and our company mission, to be ambitious, but also to be smart and to think long term. Now, to do this well, we wanted to have a good amount of introspection. We looked at what we'd done well, what we'd done not so well. We looked at what we really cared about, what we were interested in. But more importantly, we looked out to the games industry as well. We wanted to pair our passions with the gaps and opportunities that were out there in the market. And we found some trends that were particularly interesting and relevant to us, and that's what I'll be going through over the next few slides. Probably the biggest gaming trend, in my opinion at least, of the last decade is the rise of live games, live operations, and games as a service. So in that time, in the last 10 years, we've seen things like the emergence of the big free-to-play giants, the League of Legends, the Team Fortress 2, Hearthstone, World of Tanks. And then in the AAA and console space, we've also seen a move towards games as a service, and even MMO influences in Destiny, For Honor, Division, and even probably the most stalwart game around, FIFA, that's been running for so long, has been really transformed by Ultimate Team game mode with its free-to-play inspired gacha and collection gameplay. And within the last 10 years, there's been the huge rise and dominance of mobile. And those games very quickly became sophisticated in the live game sense, persistent with clan and event-driven social experiences. I think this big meta trend has been substantial and has permanently changed the world of gaming. And it was important for us while we were sort of reevaluating things to understand what was going on beneath the surface. One aspect is how publishers have dealt with the increasing cost of development and the increasing cost of user acquisition. They've been doing this by extending game life cycles to keep players engaged and to have ongoing revenue. It started with publishers trying to eke out a bit more revenue post-launch with downloadable content, or trying to slow the immediate player churn after launch with patches and other add-ons. Then to where we are now, it's evolved into games having incredibly rich social features, active community management, regular new content and regular events, to the point where a successful game launched now can continue growing well beyond launch and have many, many years of growth and profitability. And something that fascinated me was there's an equivalent trend on the player side, on the demand side, if you like. There's a lot of analyst research that shows how more players are putting down roots. They're putting more time and more money into games, and they're sticking with them for longer. And I think this is because players, they enjoy striving for mastery. They want to immerse themselves in communities. They want to share experiences with other players. They want to compete with other players. And increasingly, they like that their long-term or their time dedication to a game is being reflected back at them, is being rewarded. However, the analyst's information also shows that while players are putting down roots, as we say, they're also concentrating their time and their money into fewer games overall. So we've got this situation where games are becoming more live, they're capturing more value from a player's life cycle, but then there's greater competition to acquire and to hold on to those players. One of the ways that then drove evolution was companies finding more ways to have players stick around for longer. And for me, one of the biggest symbols of that is how RPG influences are ubiquitous in games now. Almost every type of game has XP gain, leveling up, completing collections, random prize draw, or loot mechanics. I mean, all of this stuff used to just be confined to a niche area of the games market, the one that we've always been in. But now it's in everything from casual puzzle games to military shooters. They're all infused with this RPG gameplay tropes. So we looked at all this and we concluded, fairly obviously, that live games aren't going away. They're just going to continue and grow. And this is because it's driven by like a self-fulfilling cycle of the supply and demand, what the game makers and what the game players are both valuing and both enjoying. And this then means that there's going to be increasing competition for player loyalty. So we were going through all this and we realized that our skill set in running big, feature-rich, social online games had become really relevant to where games had got to in a big way and where games were going. So we knew it was a big opportunity for us. It meant finding a way to use our skills and push the forefront of live games, standing out by offering the most fulfilling and engrossing game experiences. So we looked at what drove our success. We looked out to the best of the other big online games, and we've defined 5 principles that we believe can elevate a game and take it beyond live. So I'll take you through those 5 now. The first principle is evergreen design. This is having a game with the depth to hold the player's interest for the long term and ideally hold it indefinitely. And as a game designer or game producer, it's thinking really differently. And I went through this transition myself. You've got to think about a game being fundamentally inexhaustible and thinking about how, as it's continually expanded, it's not becoming overwhelming in its complexity, but it's also not becoming dull from too much of the same thing. And these aren't considerations that are just there in the pre-launch period. You need to keep them front of mind and keep this kind of careful curation of the game for the rest of its life. The next principle is about empowering players and giving the community a real voice in how the game is shaped and run. This is important because when players have a say, they feel like they have a stake in the game, and that makes them more emotionally bought in. And the other benefit of this is that if you're really listening to what players are saying, then the game is going to better reflect their preferences and better do what they're after. To do this effectively is pretty hard. There needs to be very good communication between you and the community. We've tried lots of different things in our time. The things for us that work the best are player polls and surveys to inform future content. We do a lot of interactivity with the community through live streams, through Reddit, through Twitter, through our own forums. And it's not just talking and listening. We share our design docs. We share our concept art. We pitch to players the ideas we've got for the future, and they pitch back to us. I think the area we've pushed the boundary most is with old school RuneScape, that retro version, where any update to the game that isn't a pure bug fix, but really any update, has to pass a majority poll with the players. So if it doesn't have at least 75% pass rate within a poll, it doesn't go into the game. This is very extreme, but it works for this game and it works for that community. And it does restrict us a lot, but the benefit of it is the players really feel like the game is their own. And I think that's one of the big reasons for its success. The third principle is about ensuring the game feels truly alive, making sure it's vibrant, always active, there's always something going on. It's exciting, but it's also an unpredictable place to be. You always want to keep players on their toes. They don't always know what's around the next corner. Similarly, it's about keeping the game feeling fresh, always updating it frequently. So for current players, there's always something new to be explored, something new to look forward to. And for players who've lapsed out, there's growing, like the longer they're away, the more there is to come back and check out. The fourth principle is meaningfully social features. Features that really foster human connection, where players can share experiences together, make genuine friendships, rivalries, maybe even players become famous within the game community. And this is far more than, it's something that we've learned is that we think it's far more than basic chat and clan functionality. I look at a lot of games now, or live games now, and it is nice to be able to import your Facebook friends or to be auto-joined into a clan after a few minutes, but I think we need to go a lot further to build truly emotional connections between players and for them to feel part of an active community. I think actually you can get to a point where there's deeper loyalty from players to the community, even more so than the game. And I think if you get to that point, you're really on the road to success. And the final principle is about providing experiences that go beyond the game screen, out onto social media, the wider internet, and ultimately into real life. We started doing this by providing support and encouragement to our most enthusiastic fans to help them go about this, but it became even better when we took it into our own hands, whether that's building tools inside the game for content creators or actually running big real-life events. Now, I think that if you can take the experience out of a game, that represents the threshold from going from a hobby for someone to being able to be a lifestyle for them. And if you can have fans who really treat your game as a lifestyle, then you're going to have a real longevity. So in our view, those are the 5 principles that push beyond live games, and that's what we're calling living games. And we're saying this to make a point that there's this another level of immersion and emotional connection that players can have with the game and with the community. And I really believe that this particular type of game, where there's depth, persistence, rich social features, can be the most satisfying and most fulfilling for players of all types of games. Now, we're really lucky to have done much of this in our RuneScape games, so I want to show you inside the bubble of what it looks like to run a living game. This is a picture from RuneFest. It's our annual fan convention. Thousands of players come from all over the world to celebrate the game and the community that they love. Part of that is cosplay. We've got attendees who spend tens of hours, some hundreds of hours, designing, tailoring, constructing these outfits. Some of them are based off famous characters from the game, but some of them are players bringing their avatars to real life, and I think that is that's just amazing. We've tried to embrace this. We help some of our top community cosplayers. These are photos from China Joy, where we took a chap called Marcus with us, and he had better cosplay standards than most other, the big publishers at that show. Of course, there are some people who are a bit less pro, but we encourage them all nonetheless. This is a photo from one of our esports tournaments. So we do a number of these a year, and we reach over 100,000 simultaneous viewers. This is great for the game, it's great for building awareness, but it also drives a lot of attention to our top players and our top clans, who in turn make up some of the thousands of live streamers who've made the game one of the most watched in the world. And then there's all types of creativity from the community that we get to see. There's a lot of memes every day, from the sublime to the ridiculous. But then there's things with a bit more talent involved. There are players who draw daily comics and make amazing illustrations and other types of artwork. Some of that artwork gets made permanent. There's a surprisingly large amount of tattoos based on RuneScape out there. There's loads of other types of really nice arts and crafts that go on as well. And of course, there's lots of cakes that get made too. These are just some of the things that we get to see from a really deeply engaged fan base who've taken the game into their hearts. And what it's done for us is it's allowed us to build a very successful and robust business. I'm very proud of some of these lifetime stats, of course, but for me the most important thing is the momentum that this generates going into the future. By striving to embody these living game principles in how we've been working recently, our RuneScape communities are really healthy and growing. We've got over 7 years average player lifetime, a really big presence on Twitch and YouTube and social media, and we've got growing subscription and activity levels. I think these are all good measures of health. And what we've decided to do now is to take these principles and apply them to our wider business and our plans for the future. And this is where I will wrap up. Our way of summing this all up is our ambition to be the home of living games. That's what we've set ourselves as a challenge. We want to be the foremost experts, both from development and publishing perspectives, and to keep evolving what live games, what living games can be. I hope maybe to be back in a few years talking about a different 5 principles, new ones that we've been part of pioneering. We're going to be doing this in a few different ways. We are going to be nurturing our existing living games of RuneScape and Old School. And as you saw the video at the beginning, we're bringing both of them to mobile this year. We think this is a pretty big deal, not just the first big Western MMOs coming to mobile, but the first to have complete cross-play between PC and mobile, so players can play wherever they are soon. We're also investing in new living games, guided by the principles I talked about today. We're going to strive to innovate both in the gameplay and in the service we provide around the games. And finally, and probably most importantly for us, we're preparing to help other developers who share in these principles bring their games to market, to find an audience, and to run a great service for their players around the world for the long term. So if you're interested in being part of this, we would absolutely love to hear from you. So that's the story of our journey, our views into live and living games. Thank you all very much for listening today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.